every day. Who's the clown we all should cheer? It's time for Buffoon of the Year. Tripping over words they say, caught on camera, no delay. Silly stunts will volunteer. Celebrate Buffoon of the Year. Buffoon of the Year. Laugh and shed a tear. Biggest fool, it's clear. Buffoon of the Year. Every headline, a new mess. Who will win? We all can guess. Silly antics, loud and clear. It's time for Buffoon of the Year. Politicians, celebs alike are behaving out of sight, making blunders for us dear. Celebrate Buffoon of the Year. Buffoon of the Year. Laugh and shed a tear. Biggest fool, it's clear. Buffoon of the Year.
All right, let's try not to fuck this one up, all right? Hey, guys, how you doing? And welcome back to Part 3, Take 2, of Buffoon of the Year. Gene Baradelli, Ross Galloway here. Ross, why'd you fuck up my show last night?
Listen, last night I was saying how I don't blame you for anything. Completely your fault last night.
Nope, not according to the sign. The sign says it all. Ross did it.
Oh,
we don't know
man.
exactly what happened. There was some sort of hiccup with StreamYard. We'll see if it happens again tonight, but knock on wood, that doesn't happen.
Gene told me after the show, he called me and said that he saw drones flying over over his house, if you can believe that.
That's actually a comment that was made when I put up the notice saying that we had technical difficulties. Someone actually said, were there any drones over Galloway's house?
Oh, my
And I
God.
said I shall neither confirm nor deny. So we're back at it again, talking about the Irredeemables, the category of buffoons that are more severe than sort of the average run-of-the-mill mock and, deride type of buffoon that I talk about in the book. I'm going to show it again, as always, because I love the freaking grift. Schnooks, Crooks, Lies, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available right now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores. I love the artwork on it. Shout out to Johnny Panisi for doing all that. The Irredeemables are sort of the more serious buffoons. The ones that are so far gone that we really can't redeem them because they're irredeemable. They're the hypocrite, the lunatic, the egotist that we talked about last night, which, by the way, we will put out that segment of the show tomorrow morning so you guys can learn more about the egotist. But I know we wanted to put a little addendum on the egotist based upon today's news. So as we cut to this portion of the show right now, that's going to go into the egotist portion after the show blew up. Ross and I, we watched the news today, and down goes Big Fanny. Fanny Willis was told that she is disqualified from the Trump prosecution in Georgia. Forgive the accent. I know I'm making fun of Fanny Willis, but I don't mean to make fun of the people in Georgia. But the appellate court ruled Fanny Willis Fanny, because, she gets upset with that. She's off the case, and she has no one to blame but herself.
And and just quickly on her, let's not forget the debacle that was her whole claim to fame for the last few months. She charged lots of people in Trump's orb with crimes and basically called the whole Trump campaign a racketeering and criminal organization, right? Like a RICO statute they charged him under. She hired her boyfriend as a special prosecutor. She paid him lots of money. He took her on lots of expensive trips. She claims she paid him back in cash because that's what black people do. And her father always told her to keep lots of cash on hand. And we know that she's so uppity that she doesn't drink wine or beer. She drinks Grey Goose. The ego on that big girl is pretty big.
Not only that, it's not only the Trump trial that she screwed up. There's some other murder trials going on that have been going on for years where there was talk of prosecutorial misconduct and witness tampering in one of them that led to some plea agreements as well. And while we can talk about all the cases and we talk about how, this is the rise of a prominent prosecutor and then fell later on, I got to ask this. How would you like to be a fly on the wall in the office of Sidney Powell or Jenna Lewis right now, who pled guilty to this buffoon? What happens there now?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. Like, there were a couple, like you said, that pled guilty. And Sidney Powell, I don't think would have ever testified against Trump, but Jeba would have, had she gotten the chance, I think. So I really don't feel bad for her, actually. She caved in. She cried. There was no crime there. There's been precedent. We're not going to get down this road because we're tight on time, but it's been precedent for what has been done in Georgia in the past, as far as different slates of electors or calling the state to, he didn't say invent some votes for me. He said, find these votes. They're out there. Your voting rolls are a mess. Your voting system is a mess.
I concur with everything that you're saying right now. So we're going to throw Fani Willis into the egotist category as well. And let us know in the comments what you think about who should win that. Just to recap, we're talking about RFK Jr. with the whole bear thing that he disclosed, Letitia James, Fani Willis, and I do have another name. Oh, all the people in the coup, Obama and Nancy Pelosi, and all of them involved in the coup on Sleepy Joe Biden, which, by the way, where the hell has he been lately? We'll get into that a little later as well.
If just real quick, the government is about to shut down and the president is MIA. Like, they're blaming Trump and Elon Musk, but I think everyone forgot Joe Biden's still the president.
Yeah, I want to talk about that whole blaming Elon Musk thing. But before we do that, it's time to move on to another category, pal. And this might be my favorite category in the book right here. You see it right there. I'm not going to say it again, but you guys know where it's available. The lunatic. Let me explain to you what the lunatic is. And basically, it's exactly what you think it is. The lunatic is sort of the beefed up on steroid version of the hot mess that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But when we're talking about lunatics in the context of politics, it goes along the same line that we talk about with any sort of lunacy. You have moments that trigger people, followed by the emotional hijack. Let me just read you something quickly from the book. The typical freakout has the same two-step process, the trigger and the emotional hijack. A trigger is something somebody says that you find offensive, judgmental, shaming, or anxiety-producing, otherwise known as triggered for all you guys out there. A behavior that hits a bruised bone of yours, an overwhelming fear that you may have been trying to suppress, a person, place, or thing that brings up a feeling of shame or fear. This is basically the Democrats to a T. Really anything that your deep brain deems to be a threat. Next comes the emotional hijack with throes of emotion, and the person becomes quickly out of balance because everything validates the trigger, and you react as if it was the only truth, which leads to, as we've seen at inauguration, screaming, crying, shutting down, or worse. This is basically every liberal stereotype that you've ever heard of, pal.
Yeah, and what makes this challenging, and I'm sure people that are listening think this too, is it's very hard to put people into these boxes because most people who are involved in politics can easily slide into and out of multiple categories or be in several categories simultaneously, right? So we have some interesting nominees here, but obviously a lot of these people could fit into other groups as well.
Oh, absolutely. The idea of hybrid buffoonery is discussed in the book as well. Anyone can be any number of combination at the same time or possess the traits of any combination in their own buffoonish nature, in their own sense of self, or in their outward self that they portray out in politics. So the first nominee, I did this last night, but I don't know if many people saw it. I'm not going to introduce the first nominee. Ross, we got a special guest to unveil the first nominee, and this announcement, it took a lot for me to get this, but this is pretty cool. So, mystery guest announced the first nominee.
Jamal Bowman!
Miracle! Shut up! Hold on, why you turn that off? Keep that going.
Can we please move on?
We're gonna show them who the fuck we are!
Say again?
We're gonna show them who the fuck we are!
That's what I thought you said.
And on June 25th, Hey, once we win this race, inshallah, we will be liberated.
How'd that go?
NBC projects that George Latimer has defeated incumbent Representative Jamal Bowman.
Awkward. America.
Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
It's coming. Why you mess it up? Damn, I'm in the zone up here.
He's a back-to-back nominee. He was nominated last year as well. Jamal Bowman is a lunatic. Tell me when I'm lying.
Bro, completely insane. For those of you guys who don't remember, that's the same guy who pulled a fire alarm in a Capitol complex building during a vote, right? Should have been charged with the January 6th charge of obstructing an official proceeding, but wasn't. I think he was charged with a misdemeanor, and really nothing ever happened to him because of that. But he lost his seat, right? The guy's a lunatic. The bigger lunatics really are the white dudes in that audience. Like those guys obviously were white dudes for Harris type people, ballless, testosterone-less dudes in an audience like that. Jamal Bowman hates you. He hates white people. Very racist dude, and he's nuts.
He certainly turned out that way during the debate that we watched when we did a reaction video to it, which, by the way, I want to point out for the record, Gene was right this time, because when I was scheduling what debates to watch, and I said to Ross, hey, we got to watch this Bowman-Latimer debate between these two Democrats in upstate New York. He's like, why? What the hell's going to come of this? And it turns out a lot came out of that. The demise of the first member of the squad came out of that.
And I remember telling you, Gene, like, you're insane. There's no way. He's so crazy that he will win. Like, there's no way he's going to get knocked off by a non-person of color in that district. And you were right. I have to say, I definitely read that wrong.
Well, the district changed in some ways, but certainly the taste in that district turned in some ways because of Bowman's position concerning the conflict between Israel and Hamas. That district had a significant Jewish population in Westchester County. Bowman won areas in the Bronx that included like areas like Co-op City. For those of you who are watching from outside of the People's Republic of New York, Co-op City, Northern Bronx, definitely a majority-minority area. Places up in Westchester that he was representing, not so much. So it broke along sort of this ethnocentric line, not necessarily race, but certainly Israel played a big part of it, and by extension, AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, they put a ton of money into this race to help Latimer win the day.
And the last thing I want to say on this is, other than the strength of AIPAC, which, you know, there's lots of stuff online about that, but I'm not going there. I think another, like, not untold, but undertold story was the kiss of death from AOC. A good percentage, if not a plurality, of the candidates that she, majority, I should say, of candidates that she fully went all in on, lost.
Including
in competitive races.
Including in the competitive race just north of where we're talking about, between Mike Lawler, the incumbent Republican, and Mondaire Jones. Lawler was running ads connecting AOC to Mondaire Jones the whole time and how he was pro-defund the police and all that. Mondaire Jones was moderating his positions, trying to show that he's not like AOC, and he still lost, just to put a fine point on what Galloway was saying there. But Jamal Bowman, complete and total lunatic. You had to see it during the debate. You saw it on stage there, and he's hitting the bricks now, although you never know with the People's Republic of New York City. There can always be a comeback in the offing in a year, 2 years. Who the heck knows? So that's one member of the squad, pal. There's another member of the squad who is shown the door, and she's another nominee for the lunatic, and that's Cori Bush. Let's show everybody why.
This is the thing.
Well, we're waiting.
All you did was take some of the strings off.
I'm not a puppet. I'm a real boy.
Let's be clear. 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 Let's be clear.
Just get to it already.
All they did was radicalize me, and so now they be afraid.
Are you threatening me?
APAC, I'm coming to tear your kingdom down.
Sounds like sour grapes to me, son. After all, we did kick your ass.
And let me put all of these corporations on notice. I'm coming after you too.
How many enemies do you have to have? Why is everything a fight?
Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Lunatic with a capital L, calling out in her concession speech, APAC, corporations, everybody against her. Meanwhile, this is a woman who was under investigation by House Ethics for payments to her husband in the six-figure range for quote-unquote security, even though he didn't have a security license at all. And she would typically, in the House, go off insulting Donald Trump in committee hearings, when she attended committee hearings, that is, and was just generally speaking a complete and utter lunatic whenever we saw her near a camera.
Complete lunatic and blurred lines with hypocrite, because not only was she paying her husband for quote-unquote security, she was also a big defund the policer. And she said that she's different because she's a congresswoman and she has a dangerous job or a dangerous lifestyle. Yeah, bitch, we all do in the People's Republic of New York and across this country. We all deserve some safety for our families.
Yeah, I mean, she represented St. Louis, by the way, and was replaced by another Democrat, of course, a more moderate Democrat. But the thing that I'm going to miss about Cori Bush is because you can always point at her to be the worst of the worst in Congress. She would never show up to committee hearings, as I said before. She had this hypocritical nature, as you pointed out as well. But anytime she spoke, it was a video for me. It was something I could have used as an option for a video later on, because everything that came out of her mouth was ridiculous. She has a background in, working with BLM, community organizer, and all that stuff. But she basically took on that mantle of privilege that you were talking about. I'm a congresswoman, and therefore I'm different and better. And as we'll be talking about later on when we get to radioactive, just because you're a member of Congress doesn't make you better at all. If anything, it makes you subservient to we the people. We'll get to that in a little while as well. I think she's like the head of the class in the nominations here for Lunatic, pal.
Yeah, and this is why I have a problem sometimes, Mr. Baradelli, when we throw people like Lauren Boebert or some other certain Republicans in for some of these categories. So when you look at people like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and AOC, they are like completely insane, right? Like our Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, okay, she's nuts, but she's nowhere near as nuts as these people, right? I don't want to make excuses for our side, but come on.
Well, no. Well, I'm going to challenge this right now. Let me give you my argument. When you make the jump from, let's say, here to here, that's significant because you were low and you made a middle jump. But when you're already up here and you just go a little bit more, I think that's not as noticeable. It takes a big leap to be noticed as a buffoon. So if someone who is normal 90% of the time, let's say, or when it comes to Lauren Boebert, let's say 50% of the time, whatever, when she's not, performing sex acts in a theater, or when she's not changing districts or whatever, when she has that movement from the lower ranks up significantly, that to me means more than a buffoon doing something a little buffoonish that's known to be at the top of the ladder there. Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman are here because they were already up here and they ratcheted it up to 11 and made a bigger move. Lauren Boebert and RFK Jr. and other people on there that are normally reasonable, they made a move that raised an eyebrow because they're normally that low. And when they reach up to another level, it's got to get called out.
All right, I can buy that because I'm about to break my own rules tonight, so I'm with you.
Yes, and we'll be talking about hypocrites later on as well. We got two more nominees that we can run through here. I don't have videos prepared for them necessarily. I'm going to throw this all together with another member of the squad, but Rashida Tlaib, and I would say all of those protesters and pro-Hamas supporters on college campuses, they go hand in hand because they both suffer from the same lunacy. I would say that Tlaib is a little more insidious because she knowingly parrots the talking points of a terrorist organization. I can give a little more forgiveness to a college student caught up in a movement on campus that doesn't really know any better, hasn't had any lived experience or anything like that, for parroting what's going on out in the world and being on the side of a cause that they think is going to give them more credibility as the liberal they are. But anyone who is out there being an apologist for Hamas, they gotta go. They're lunatics.
No, 100%. I don't give much deference to those college protesters. I think they should burn in hell too. But Tlaib, in particular, she runs around claiming to be a quote-unquote Palestinian, but yet is a member of the squad and is a far-left lunatic who would be stoned to death in her own homeland if she espoused a lot of the views there that she does here. So, yeah, she's nuts.
Oh, I completely agree. I'm looking for a video now. We did do a video. Actually, you know what? I'll plug it in later. But we did a video of the protests happening outside Columbia. And I don't know if it was this year or last year, but it was basically one of those chants where someone chants something and they repeat it back. And it was co-opted by a lot of these communist organizations that embed into these protests and all that. And they were talking about, Hamas, we love you, and things like that. I'll put it in on replay right here. But to me, that sort of blind following is another form of lunacy because they're being triggered by something they don't even realize they're being triggered by and allowing themselves to be emotionally hijacked in that process.
Yeah, completely irrational maniac she is. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, and it breeds other hot messes, really, that we talked about a couple weeks ago, to become these lunatics.
So this is dominated by the squad here, this category, I see.
Oh, absolutely. We got one more that we can talk about as well. I'm not going to look at that video now. I'll look for it later. To me, this is another sort of late entry into this, or maybe not. But I think that if we're talking about the squad or members who are influenced by the squad or whatever, a person that distinguished themselves as a lunatic and established themselves that way, Jasmine Crockett. We talked about her a couple of weeks ago with the whole run-in with Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC with fake eyelashes and the cattiness going back and forth on them.
Loved it.
I loved it too. And just recently, she's been, crowing about Trump and sort of marking her territory to be the latest loudmouth in Congress to just go after Trump for no reason. I think she's worthy of being the lunatic.
She's nuts. They played a clip earlier today on TV. I hate this guy's fucking name, but he calls himself Charlemagne the God. And he was interviewing Ms. Crockett, and she went on a rant about how Elon Musk bought the presidency with $250 million. And to his credit, Charlemagne says, well, if you think he bought the presidency with $250 million, what did the vice president do with over $1 billion? And there was no answer, no coherent answer.
No answer at all. There can't be an answer. She actually went online today. I'm going to see if I can pull this up while we're talking here. But I noticed a tweet that she made about Elon being sort of like the shadow president. It seems like everyone is saying that. That's sort of the party line here. And I just found it right now. Let me see if I can find my reply to it. So her tweet was, which branch of government does Elon belong to? Asking for a friend. And the response was, from a lot of people, he doesn't need to be part of it. He's part of we the people. It's the most important branch of the government.
Of the people, by the people, for the people. He's one of the people.
Absolutely. There was another one here. Let me, I just found my response here. I'm going to see if I can get this up on screen for us right now. Right, so let me see if I can get this on screen. Got to remember how to do all this stuff with the bells and whistles now, pal.
He's on the fly, boys. He's on the fly.
Yeah, look out now. Here we go. Okay, if you can see it on the screen, Jasmine Crockett. Which branch of government does Elon belong to? Asking for a friend. And my response, which doesn't get any traction because, when you talk to a member of Congress, nothing gets traction. let me help the slow congresswoman here. Elon Musk is one of the people, as in we the people from which the three branches of government, one of which you serve in, were empowered. You're not above we the people, ma'am. You are subordinate to us. Hope that helps.
Brilliant.
I think it's the right thing to say.
Which
right?
branch of government was Rachel Maddow in, or Joe Scarborough in, or George Clooney in, right? Or not Shakira. Who's the other one that was supposedly going to sing at the DNC?
I mean, the Beyonce, Megan Thee Stallion.
Which branch of government are they in?
Yeah.
Robert De Niro. I can go on and on.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Absolutely. Any one of them. But their influence is on their side. You know, Jasmine Crockett loves it when people agree with her on her own side of the aisle. But God forbid a billionaire with an opinion like Elon Musk steps in and says something. And he is the media as well now. I mean, one of the things he loves saying now is we are the media, being we as in everyone on X. And he has his opinion and people listen to it. Just like any other influencer out there.
I have to just make a note here, Gene. I can't help but notice, but 3 of the 4 people that we've nominated here are women. I think you're a sexist. Although Jamal Bowman's video, I think he has this category sealed up.
Oh, listen, I'm sexist, I'm racist, I'm misogynist, I'm every-ist in this.
They're all women and people of color, Gene. I got to say, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, we made up for that by nominating RFK Jr. and Lauren Boebert in other categories as well. We are equal opportunity offenders for Buffoon of the Year. If you did something stupid, we're coming for you, as you'll see in the segments to come as well. But right now, I want to know what you guys think out there. Let us know in the comments whenever you're watching this, whether it's live or on replay. Let us know who you think should be the lunatic of 2024. Galloway says Bowman. I say Cori Bush. What say you guys? Let us know in the comments. We're going to roll on here, and this is probably the most well-known category of buffoon out there in the world. Everyone hates hypocrisy. I don't need to explain to you the definition of hypocrisy, even though I have it in the book, Schnooks, Crooks, Lies, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons. You know where to find it and all that. The hypocrite, we obviously know what the deal is. They are so far gone from being sort of the agenda gymnast. Actually, any one of those lesser hypocrites, the BS buffoon that we talked about, the one we bless your heart and all that, the hot mess, the narcissist, or the agenda gymnast that we talked about, they can all become hypocrites just by maintaining a higher level of whatever, I guess we'll call it entry-level buffoon. You know, those categories like the marijuana, a buffoon, the gateway drug into becoming into harder drugs, those are the gateways to becoming hypocrites. Because the hypocrite is so far gone, they don't even bother trying to defend when they are using a double standard or they're trying to go after someone for something that they themselves do or whatever the case may be that is their brand of hypocrisy.
Yeah, and with all fairness, you know, I would say the majority of the Democratic Party are hypocrites just by their nature. But surprisingly, I'm going to throw a lot of Republican names out there.
We're going to, absolutely, because I was about to say the majority of rhinos, the so-called Republicans in name only, are also hypocrites. You can throw Lindsey Graham's name in there just as much as you can throw in anyone else's name in there. I do want to get to the ones that we sort of talked about before. So one of my favorite hypocrites that we could talk about is our boy Morning Joe. We already nominated him for the hack. Morning Joe, according to Newsbusters, had the most hypocritical quote of the year. And we sort of played it last time when we talked about the hack, but let's revisit it now. This is from March of this year when Morning Joe was talking about how mentally fit Joe Biden was.
A couple of hours with Joe Biden sitting, talking, going around the world as far as talking issues, talking the economy, talking inflation. And I must say, when I was talking to him, my thought wasn't, oh, poor guy. My thought was, oh, my God, I wish Dr. Brzezinski were on the other side of the table right now, because these two guys, I mean, 50 years of experience, and Joe Biden hasn't forgotten it. He may get pissed off at a press conference, and he may be thinking about the Mexican border deal and say Mexico instead of Egypt. He knows what he's talking about. He circles back around, gets to Egypt. He might misplace a word here and there, but you talk to him for hours at a time. Is he slower? Does he move slower? Yeah, he's moved slower. Is he stiffer? Yeah, he moves stiffer. Does he have trouble walking sometimes? Yeah, so did FDR. We got out of the Depression. We won a GD war. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
And that ending part there was part of that quote. He prefaces by saying, "Hey, zoom in your camera right here and listen to what I'm saying."
Yeah, he said, "Zoom in your camera, get out your pens, write this down."
Yeah, and we as you saw there, we covered that on This Week in Dumbocracy, which I hope you guys tune into in 2025. By liking, sharing, subscribing to this channel, you can help others find clips like that, where we actually covered the worst quote, the most hypocritical quote in 2024. Does that qualify Morning Joe to be the hypocrite of 2024? The fact that he was covering so much for Joe Biden and then not only abandoned that when Biden was taken out in that palace coup, but then after the election starts trying to buddy up to Trump.
Which is even worse because you left out a major part. Night after night after night, he was calling Donald Trump a fascist and all MAGA supporters fascists. And then he went to go kiss the ring and meet with him and said he would work with him. You don't call someone Hitler and then say, well, I might be able to work with this guy after he wins an election. You don't say he's a threat to democracy and then say we're going to have a peaceful transition of power to him.
And by the way, let's remind everybody what we're talking about with this clip from Morning Joe.
Oh, my God.
Oh, I don't know. We won't call them fascist comments. Fascism. Fascist. Call fascism. Just fascist. Fascist
notions of fascism. Xenophobic, racist, demagogic, racist, sexist, xenophobic, autocratic, and fascistic. Donald Trump is a fascist.
Someone like a fascist or a tyrant or an autocrat.
Fascist rhetoric, fascist language, fascists.
I'm glad that you're starting talking about fascism. Hitler.
Right. Fascist rhetoric. He's talking the way fascists talk. It's autocratic, fascist, Nazi Germany. Before the rise of Hitler, fascist language.
To Hitler, fascist, Hitler. Adolf Hitler.
Hitler. But Hitler.
From what Adolf Hitler preached in the early 30s. Let's just say it once and for all.
And again, that's brought to us by Tom Elliott and Grabby, and they make some great stuff over there. Tom is awesome. Check him out on Twitter.
Fantastic.
At Tom S. Elliott. That's what you were talking about. He definitely did all that for many, many years, almost nearly a decade. And now he's trying to remain in the game and he's acting totally hypocritical. I think he definitely qualifies. Got some other videos I want to show you, pal. We can basically indict every single Democrat when it comes to this year's hypocrite, when they were all using the same violent rhetoric. Now, I know you don't subscribe to this theory so much, but when you have an election season, when everyone is calling Donald Trump an existential threat to democracy, democracy on the ballot, democracy is under attack, and then some lunatic, or lunatics, I should say, go out and try to unalive the once and future president, you got to call people hypocrites who kept using that rhetoric, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with the health insurance CEO shooting with this guy Luigi Mangione, right? A lot of the left, including like Elizabeth Warren, saying things like, I don't support violence at all, but if you push people far enough, they might take things into their own hands. So you are supporting violence, right? Like, I just want to clarify a point that you made, or my position. I do not believe that if someone gets shot because of something Elizabeth Warren said, she should be held accountable at all. I don't think so. But in the game that we play, where they're constantly saying that things we say lead to violence, or sometimes they say that things we say are actually violence, right? Then the game has to be for both of us, right? So I'm a fan of blaming them and throwing stones because they do it to us. But in reality, my real position is, obviously, whatever someone says it's the person to blame who's behind the trigger, right?
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I strawmanned you there. I didn't mean to do that.
No, I get what you're saying because it's kind of probably too nuanced for me to even explain.
Well, it's like saying that the Capitol baseball shooter that was a Bernie bro and supported Bernie Sanders doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders is responsible for that shooting.
I think it's fair to bring it up whenever they say things Donald Trump said is leading people to violence. Then it's definitely fair to say, well, what about things Bernie Sanders said that led that guy to violence, right? But I don't really believe that. That guy was a nut.
Right. Either they're both wrong or no one's wrong,
Yes.
right? Look, I did put it in a clip. Frankly, I don't even remember the clips I put in because we're doing this as a take two. But this clip says Biden rhetoric short, so I'm going to play it.
You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye.
That seems kind of extreme.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him.
Which doesn't sound any better.
But have you taken a step back and done a little soul searching on things that you may have said that could incite people who are not balanced?
Initiate flashback!
I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. Talks about the blood of America as being poisoned. Echoing the same exact language used in Nazi Germany. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
So what do you think?
Look, I've not engaged in that rhetoric.
Are you stupid or something?
It's called political buffoonery.
I'm glad these clips tickle you, but there is
that was a great mashup.
There is a serious point to be made from all this. Joe Biden can't be buffoon of the year because he's president and we exempt the president and the vice president from competition because they're always buffoons all the time. And to include them would mean that they would win basically every single category. So we don't want to do that. We want to breed competition. But when it starts from the top, it trickles down throughout the party. Joe Biden gave everyone license to call Donald Trump a threat. When you call someone a threat, there will be people out there that support you that would want to eliminate the threat. You made the example of that guy, Luigi Mangione, right? How he went after the CEO from healthcare. There's a copycat out there right now that I think was stopped because someone went to stab another CEO today. Those people got the idea because they see insurance costs being high and they see far left extremists talking about that being violence against poor people.
Yes.
As an example of extreme rhetoric leading to extreme action.
I think it was AOC that said that people can interpret a claim being denied as violence against them. Like, that's absurd, right?
Yeah.
And
justifying what this guy did.
Which makes this even more dangerous for the extremist rhetoric talk. And you left-wing nut jobs out there, take note of this. Look up what the word existential threat actually means, right? The words. Existential, the very existence. So when they say things like our country, or Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy, our country, or my SUV is an existential threat to planet Earth, just know that they're full of shh. You know what I mean? They're full of it. Don't fall for it.
Yeah, you say shh, I'll say it.
Good.
We put it all together right there. I agree with you totally, pal. So if anyone that was using extreme rhetoric out there and then was pearl clutching whenever somebody says the least little bit of possibly maybe threatening thing in a rhetorical sense, they're hypocrites.
And just real quick, Gene, how more extreme can you get in your rhetoric than calling people fascist and saying that they're going to end democracy, right? Like, you don't get any more extreme than that. So when they say like, oh, both sides use extremist rhetoric, really? Like, one side says, hey, man, these guys are like communists, because they are. And the other side is saying, like, this guy is going to destroy the democracy and be a dictator.
And cause World War III.
Or World War III.
That. Craziness. Let's talk on the lighter side of hypocrisy. A little bit on the lighter side, I'm going to throw all these Ivy League presidents under the bus here. We talk about the buffoons a lot, on this channel because, it's the name of the channel, Buffoon of the Week or whatever. But there were a lot of heroes fighting the fight against buffoonery. One of them is the future U.S. ambassador to the UN, Elise Stefanik, who basically picked off, and maybe that's too violent language for everybody, but caused the resignation of several Ivy League presidents by calling out their hypocrisy about what was going on campus concerning Israeli students and their treatment and students who were pro-Hamas protesting on campuses. And I'll put a clip of that in right here on replay. But not only that rhetoric, and I'll let you talk on that, Russ, later on, but even after the election, that hypocrisy still showed through in favor of one side over the other. But let's talk about these Ivy League presidents. Harvard, I believe, was one. MIT was another. UPenn, I think, might have been a third. I have to go back and check. But by calling them out on their policies towards these protests, it gained a lot of traction, I think, for Republicans in this election cycle to call out that hypocrisy.
Yeah. And the hypocrisy was so astounding because of what they claim to be, right? Like, that's obviously the definition of hypocrisy. They claim that their campuses, and they all bought into DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They all bought into that, and they claim this mantle of diversity and tolerance. But what they really mean is like racism, because it's diversity except, I guess, for Jews, Asians, whites, women playing in women's sports, right? It's diversity, equity, inclusion, except for them, which doesn't make sense. It's diversity of the color of your skin pigmentation, but not your thoughts. They're supposed to teach you how to think, not what to think. And they were total hypocrites on all I just said.
I went to Manhattan University for my undergrad, and I had a mentor, political science professor, shout out to Dr. Winsome Downey, who was as liberal could be when you were living in the late 90s. She never stopped me from exploring my own point of view when it came to what side of the aisle I was going to be on. I worked for Democrats, I worked for Republicans in college, and she allowed me to grow within the learning tree that she was from the point of view of, she gave me the analytical tools to be able to make decisions about policy that I believed in. And that's what's lost on campus today.
Yeah, because she was a classic liberal, right? The word liberal, if you look it up, like what was a classical liberal? People who were more open-minded. Today's left, they're not liberals. I'm glad they actually changed their name to progressives. It still sounds too good for what they actually are, because they're just progressively going further left into communist totalitarian land.
Oh, absolutely. I've divided the left now into three categories: Democrats, liberals, and leftists. That's how I see them now. And I think they go into a descending madness as you go from Democrat to liberal to leftist. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I know you think I'm too nice, but that's how I handle those hypocrites. But the hypocrisy in Ivy Leagues didn't just end there, because at the end of the year, after Trump won the election, how did campuses react? They had to coddle all the snowflakes. Let me show you this clip, pal. Just lean over to the side towards your blinds, and everyone will see both us and the clip.
This is an example of what a professor sent to students at Columbia. I have decided to cancel our class today. I had planned an alternative lecture on modern polling methods and their blind spots. It feels a bit tone deaf to deliver it today.
What a load of crap.
This is a Harvard professor as well. As we recover from the eventful election night, this is crazy. Is this a disease or something? And process the implications of Trump's victory. Please know that class will proceed as usual today, except the classroom quizzes will not be for credit. Feel free to take some time off as needed.
What the fuck, man?
This was in the Princetonian. We have been hearing about lots of anxiety from students about the election and felt like listening circles, oh my goodness. Listening circles can be a helpful way to allow students to process and get support from one another.
Okay, whatever. Screw you, snowflakes.
This is a weird group of people, and they call us weird.
the hypocrisy of this intelligentsia is that during this election cycle, all of the quote unquote educated people on the left were calling supporters of Donald Trump weirdos and outside of mainstream thought and all that. When they're the ones that need listening circles or time off from lectures in order to cope with the reality of an election. We want to talk about weird.
Yeah.
Those are the weirdos.
You also want to talk about hypocrisy, Gene. The professors and the administrators at these Ivy League schools are all earning high 6- and 7-figure salaries. The tuition costs at those higher places of education are through the roof. They have huge tax-free endowments. They receive federal funding, student loan forgiveness they keep advocating for. And it's all because their students graduate with these dumb degrees and can't find good paying jobs, right? Talk about hypocrisy.
Oh, it's totally hypocrisy. And who ends up paying for it? Those uneducated, quote unquote, skilled laborers who don't have the benefit of the tax advice or anything like that we see out with more professional people and things like that. They're getting stuck with the bill. And by the way, you didn't even mention tenure. You didn't even mention lifetime employment that they, quote unquote, earn because they wrote their PhD thesis on, the patterns of migratory birds in Saskatchewan or whatever the hell they're doing.
Tenure, federal grants to do research, legacy admissions.
Sabbaticals.
Which is the most racist thing you can have, right?
Yeah, sabbaticals. and these institutions, we talked about this last year a little bit, try to defend their racist admissions policies when like Harvard turns away Asian students because they're just too smart.
Yeah.
So they can be racist, they can be misogynist, they can act and do whatever they want and pursue their flights of fancy. But then when it comes to how the rest of the country is living, they have to have a say in that as well. And it's got to be normal and reasonable according to what they think is normal and reasonable. I think that's enough of them for the moment because Mr. Galloway has some last-minute nominees for hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to break his own 11th commandment.
I'm going to have to tonight because it broke my heart to see this, even though it was so foreseeable. I knew this was going to happen. The Republicans are useless. I don't know how many times I have to tell you guys this. The Republican Party is useless. Specifically, Congressmen Chip Roy, Nancy Mace, and Thomas Massey. They voted against the skinny CR tonight, right? And helped it sink. The reason they're giving is because it kept spending levels the same as was in the past. I don't know, if they give them a class when they become congressmen. A continuing resolution means you keep funding the government at the same level in order to avoid a shutdown until you could pass an actual budget, which they keep failing to do. That's their job. They keep failing to do it. So what will happen? There was a ridiculous continuing resolution, which really wasn't. It was more of an omnibus continuing resolution because it included new spending that dumbass Speaker Mike Johnson put on the table the other day. That one went down in flames because of Elon and some other people, including Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. A new one gets submitted today, 167 pages long, trimmed down, basically just does some funding for the hurricane and continues government spending into next month until Trump takes office and the new Congress is seated. And these Republicans, along with 38 of their friends, voted against it. So now what happens real quick, Gene? What happens is Johnson, who is not good to begin with, has no other option but to court Democrats to come on board with the vast majority of Republicans who are trying to keep the government funded until Trump takes office. So now, instead of getting what they kind of wanted, they're going to get none of what they wanted. And I'm just going to leave with this because it's so poignant. Ronald Reagan once said, if you got 75 or 80% of what you're asking for, I say you take it and fight for the rest later, right? All these people that claim to be like constitutional conservatives and Ronald Reagan Republicans, they never take a win, ever. They will grasp defeat out of the jaws of victory every single fucking time. The Republicans are useless.
And the Republicans showed how useless they were right around the same time last year when we were talking about who's going to be the Speaker of the House. We should have known that this would be happening again and again, but I did not think with a Trump victory in the popular vote, with a Trump victory in the Electoral College, with Trump coattails bringing the House, I should say, keeping the House in Republican control and wresting control of the Senate, I did not think that we'd be seeing this sort of turmoil that we saw last year. Let's just remind everyone what happened with these Republicans, quote unquote, last year when it came to getting a House Speaker after Matt Gaetz took down Kevin McCarthy.
Scalise has just hit the majority of the House Republicans. They have voted for him to be the nominee on the House floor for a Speaker.
That's good.
I just shared with my colleagues that I'm withdrawing my name as a candidate for the Speaker designee.
Ooh, that's bad.
Republicans voted to nominate staunch conservative Jim Jordan of Ohio.
That's good.
A few minutes ago, the House Republican Conference met privately, and via secret ballot, they have voted to yank his nomination from him.
That's bad.
Representative Tom Emmer has won the Republican nomination for Speaker.
That's good.
Moments ago, Tom Emmer of Minnesota, the latest to lead the pack of candidates for House Speaker, dropped out.
That's bad.
The next day,
Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Can I go now?
America. Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Yeah.
And guess what, Gene? We're in for that same ride again. The last thing, I just want to put one fine point on this thing. The reason why I'm saying Chip Roy, Nancy Mason, Thomas Massie are so bad and so hypocritical, I don't know what they think we can get onto the floor this week and get passed in the House that will also pass in the same form in the current Democrat-controlled Senate and be signed into law by the current Democrat president. Right? Like, I don't know what they think they're going to get. Right? What was put on the floor tonight and failed because of the Republicans was our best case scenario, and they blew it.
Well, let's see what Plan C is going to look like in the near future.
Plan C will be way more spending in this CR than was put on the floor earlier tonight. Guaranteed. So we lost again.
I agree with you, pal. This leads perfectly into our discussion, the final discussion of the night, the most egregious type of buffoon, the radioactive. The radioactive is the kind of buffoon that not only is completely irredeemable, but their radioactivity, their guilt by association goes to other people around them. I gave a good example of this in my book, which I'm going to bring up again here. Schnooks, Crooks, Lies, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available right now on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores. The perfect example of that is former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who not only has hurt his own legacy based upon what happened with his own administration during COVID and claims of sexual harassment and all of that, but how that spread to his brother who was involved in the scandal, to other staffers that were involved in the scandal as well, and it just sort of infected them just by association with Cuomo's buffoonery, which is highly destructive, by the way. We're talking about really highly destructive acts by these sorts of buffoons. And the reason why I said this leads in so well into our prior discussion that we just had about hypocrites in the House GOP, because this situation is now owned by, as you said earlier, Speaker Mike Johnson. And anyone associated with him in his leadership now is going to be called into question for his failure to get that skinny continuing resolution passed. This is literally the most recent example of radioactive buffoonery.
Yeah, I think Mike Johnson, and he's a last-minute add-on in here, is the most radioactive person of the year right now. He was skating on thin ice for months, and this may be the final nail in the coffin. The initial 1,500 plus page bill he dropped was so absurd. It included things like blocking investigations into congressional offices and the January 6th committee. It had a pay raise for Congress of 40% stuffed away in there, and a bunch of other woke language and having to do with criminal justice. Like, the guy became completely toxic to the point where I think Donald Trump is going to throw him overboard.
It could well happen, but I have to say, pal, I'm going to push back on you a little bit here. I think you got a little bit of recency bias going on because this just happened, and the feelings are very fresh because it's going on right now. I think that there are several other buffoons that we can definitely talk about who are definitely more radioactive. But before we get off of Mike Johnson here, I feel that this buffoonery is not over with, and that maybe the jury should be out on Mike Johnson, and let's see if he can find his way out of this. If he finds his way out and he comes out looking pretty good in the end, does that wash away the radioactivity?
There's only one way out of this, and I don't think he has the balls to do it. If his plan all along was to shut down the government and blame the Democrats until sometime in January, then that would be a home run. He would not lose a single member on our side of the aisle if that was his plan.
But he lost the high ground. He lost the high ground by not
high ground because the Democrats are already out there blaming the Republicans for shutting down the government, when it was the Democrats that voted in mass or in block to vote down this measure, right? So it's clearly the Democrats, and we lost the high ground. So unless his plan all along was to get the government shut down, I don't see how he survives this.
Yeah, I think that's the buffoonery is right there. He lost the high ground when he put forth this skinny CR, as they call it, and didn't have the votes to pass it. That's the true radioactive buffoonery. That's the lack of leadership that the speaker is going to have. And if he has this lack of leadership now at the end of this Congress, going into a slimmer majority with the beginning of the next Congress, especially with Trump picking off some very great members in the House to go into different executive positions, why should anyone have confidence in Mike Johnson at this point?
Yeah, and like you said, there's some recency bias, but the half-life of this radioactive mess is not going to be shorter than a few months, and he doesn't have a few months. He has a few days before the government shuts down, and a couple of weeks at most before the next speaker is selected in the House. So there's no way he's surviving this.
And the longer it takes to get leadership in order in the House, the more delayed a Trump administration's agenda is going to be. So we're going to keep an eye on that going into 2025, certainly. But this brings up also the same debate we've had on all of these year in review shows, pal. What is more buffoonish? That one big bomb of buffoonish magnitude, or a track record of buffoonery? Because the other nominees have decent track records of radioactive buffoonery. We talked about Andrew Cuomo as the example I use in my book. Well, guess what? Andrew Cuomo is back up for nomination. Here's one reason why. The Chinese government played Andrew Cuomo like a goddamn fiddle, and he thanked them for it.
Son worked for former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Prosecutors say she acted as an undisclosed agent of China, changing the governor's messaging regarding issues of importance to the Chinese. And a representative for former Governor Cuomo saying that while he was in office, Son had little to no interaction with the governor.
I call bullshit. Prosecutors say that Son used the Chinese government to get ventilators over to New York State during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so she said that Cuomo would thank them publicly.
I actually found that public thank you in one of Andrew Cuomo's daily COVID updates.
Flashback.
The Chinese government is going to facilitate a donation of 1,000 ventilators. And I want to thank Ambassador Wang very much.
Sun thanked PRC Official 1 for complimenting Sun's work, which Sun stated would empower her to do more for the PRC. And that's how Andrew Cuomo is bringing back all his 2020 buffoonery into the mix. Not only that, but the COVID subcommittee in the House grilled Andrew Cuomo, especially, again, Elise Stefanik, who's been a hero all year long, and our friend, pal, Nicole Malliotakis. They read the riot act to Andrew Cuomo in Congress, and he has now been referred to the Justice Department by the House GOP for charges concerning his handling of the COVID pandemic. Not to mention that he's trying a political comeback right now and maybe running for mayor of the People's Republic of New York City. That's longevity of buffoonery that dates back to 2020 and will still be talked about going into 2025.
The man has some staying power in buffoonery. That's without a doubt. Because he also didn't he call on like Brett Kavanaugh to not get appointed to the Supreme Court because of the allegations made against him. And then he got caught up in his own Me Too movement for molesting a state police bodyguard that he had.
And by the way, one of those sexual harassment lawsuits was just dropped voluntarily by the victim. I forget which case it was. I think her name is Charlotte Bennett. And now Cuomo is going to be suing her reportedly for defamation because he's a vindictive son of a bitch.
Well,
that just came out today as well.
Listen, I hate the guy and I wish nothing but bad things for him, even though I do think he'll be the mayor of New York City if he runs. But if he can prove that it was a lie against him, that woman does deserve to be sued. She actually deserves to be in jail, in my opinion. But, that's for another day.
Absolutely. But there are other buffoons with long-standing buffoonery. Maybe this is the crown prince of all radioactive buffoons right here.
Obviously, we're not going with the New York Post story right now on Hunter Biden.
This is really one of the stupidest October surprises I've ever seen.
It helps to really view this as storytelling, not so much as news coverage, but as political entertainment.
Okay, I would love if you guys would start doing that digging and start doing that verification.
No, we're not going to do your work for you.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
More than 50 former intelligence officials released a statement that the laptop had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation.
The prosecution entering Hunter Biden's laptop as evidence.
America! Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
And then, after all those years of talking about Hunter and his laptop and everything going on in Ukraine and Burisma and all that, the government used that same laptop as evidence against Hunter Biden, got convictions on some tax fraud stuff and the possession of the weapon when he lied on an application, and then he got pardoned for all of it. But isn't this the definition of radioactivity with Hunter Biden? He is the ultimate radioactive buffoon.
He is 100% radioactive. But what is shocking to me is that even throughout the year, as it was very clear that he was radioactive, no one should be anywhere near this guy. He was seen in public multiple times this year with the president, at public events. And he was actually interviewed by some mainstream media folks who treated him with kid gloves, really, right? When everyone knew this stuff was true. Even they knew it was true, even though they didn't want to admit it. The guy was radioactive, but he was not treated as such by the left, which to me tells volumes. You know what I mean? The right, no one's hanging out with Matt Gaetz tonight, right? No one's going to be seen at a party with Matt Gaetz. But Hunter was still trotting out there with Joe Biden and going to the Easter egg hunt at the White House. It was crazy.
Yeah. And the craziest thing is he's at the Christmas party recently at the White House.
Hanging out with Flavor Flav.
And all these influencers that get paid, all the shills that we talked about in previous episodes, are taking photos and putting them up online. Here's me and Hunter Biden hanging out. And I'm like, you freaking moron. You think this helps you?
People spent millions of dollars on his artwork. The guy's radioactive. He's under all these investigations. Why would you take a chance at a money laundering charge coming at you by buying that artwork?
It's the thin line between fame and infamy, pal. So Hunter Biden definitely a nominee. But if you want to talk about the most radioactive politician of 2024, and I don't have any pithy clip right now, but I'll certainly get one up later. Eric Adams, mayor of the People's Republic of New York City. Who's more radioactive than him? I mean, we made cases for Cuomo. We made cases for Hunter Biden. But who has had more cronies, politicians, whatever you want to call them, arrested because they were around Eric Adams?
Bro, you're not going to like what I'm going to say here. I'm starting to like Eric Adams a little bit. He is the real black version of like a Donald Trump in my view, but on the left. But as far as being radioactive, 100% true. Didn't his like special assistant just get indicted today or turned herself into authorities today? I forgot her name. But literally everyone in this guy's orbit is either under investigation, had their cell phones seized, electronic devices seized by the government, is indicted, had to resign in disgrace. So yes, completely radioactive.
Well, I got one better for you, pal, and I'm gonna try to pull this up as best I can right now because it's a little hard to do while we're doing it on the fly. But New York Magazine had a cover, and it was entitled "Last One Out of City Hall, Turn Out the Lights." On this cover, there are a litany of people who were in the in the Adams administration and have been arrested, indicted, charged, convicted. Let me see if I can. I'm going to try to do this here on the screen. Give me 1 second here. But the list goes from police chiefs and all that. I almost got it. Dang it. Come on.
It really is astonishing when you think about the number.
Son of a bitch. Goddamn paywall. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I was just trying to buy you some time while you look for that thing. But it really is astonishing the number of people in his inner circle that have found themselves sitting across the table from a federal investigator. What's even more astonishing is that it's all federal, right? I haven't heard of one single state or city entity looking into any of these people, which to me is crazy because New York City spends a lot of money on not only the NYPD, but the Department of Investigation. Yeah, look at this. This is great.
So here's the cover. I can zoom in a little. There we go. We can zoom in a lot more there. Linda Zornberg, former federal prosecutor, City Hall Chief Counsel, resigned. Health Commissioner, resigned. NYPD, raided and resigned. First Deputy Mayor, raided and resigned. It goes on and on and on.
There you go. That woman that on the right that says raided with the red lipstick. She just turned herself in today.
Ingram Lewis Martin, the mayor's chief advisor. You may have seen her on many of the migrant panels that they had daily. Raided and now indicted. You go down further and you see fire chief indicted. Our buddy Eric Ulrich, a Republican, who I'm actually loving that this happened, resigned and indicted. It's but that's an indictment unrelated, I believe, to a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about here. Good to see.
Birds of a feather.
Good to see some comeuppance there, though. And that's for personal reasons, folks. I'm not going to go into it, but he screwed over a friend of ours, and what goes around comes around. That's radioactivity.
Radioactive. Man. Like I said, I kind of like him because he's a fighter and he's acting somewhat more right nowadays. But if you ask me what I want to like get on a text chain with Eric Adams, I'll decline that invitation.
Absolutely. The last nominee, the last of all Buffoon of the Year, we're going to go very quickly through. Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard out of the Chicago suburbs. She's been in the news for over a year now with all the reactivity that comes along with it about her allegedly illegal spending of taxpayer dollars. And there's literally a litany of this. Go check out Nate the Lawyer. He has so many videos about Tiffany Henyard. Also check out Actual Justice Warrior. He has the same litany of videos as well. The upshot of it all is she's under federal investigation. Many of her people have been arrested by the FBI that were in her administration and her supporters. The Democrat Party has turned against her and will not be nominating her for her position as supervisor for another town. I don't know how it works in these small places. You're a mayor of the city adult, and then you're a town supervisor or county supervisor, whatever it is. It's crony politics all around. And meanwhile, she's just Lottie freaking da. She's the mayor. She hides behind her race. She hides behind her gender. She lies to everybody. She has allegedly phony charities out there. Definitely radioactive.
And she's also got the Jasmine Crockett eyelashes. Just throwing that out there.
And there's the hypocrisy of Ross Galloway calling me every ist when we were talking about lunatic. And he's coming back around to talk about somebody's eyelashes.
Just saying.
All right. Well, listen. We made it, pal. We made it through Buffoon of the Year. I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in, even when the show glitches and screws up. Who is Buffoon of the Year? Ooh. There's been so freaking many people that we talked about here. And we can't talk about Biden and we can't talk about Harris. Who is overall to you Buffoon of the Year?
It's tough, man. I'm looking at all the notes we took for the last few shows. It's hard.
It's very hard. I don't know who to pick. I honestly don't know who to pick. I mean, if I had to pick one nominee out of all of these for being the most egregious, I would look for one that was pervasive throughout a lot of different categories. And when I think about that, the name that keeps coming back up to me is Nancy Pelosi. We talked about her as an agenda gymnast. We talked about her as being part of that coup. I think that she has the track record for this. I can also point to someone like Fani Willis, who is a complete and utter narcissist and finally got kicked out on her fanny. That's another one. But then we can also talk about buffoonish magnitude, and you could talk about someone like a Jamal Bowman, a Cori Bush, a Mike Johnson, and they all fit the bill. Is there anyone that you think covers it all?
I mean, cover it all is definitely one to look at. And I know that's probably what we should give more weight to. The other one is just sheer frequency. So like the top two that I was circling them as we go. The ones I put like little asterisks next to were Joe Scarborough and Karine Jean-Pierre, because it's just they're in your face every day, falling most likely into one, if not all of these categories. So like for that reason alone, the quantity of the work they put out throughout the year, those are my top two.
The point is, there's a lot of choices for everybody out there to choose Buffoon of the Year. So let us know what you think in the comments. We're going to put up some polls between now and then. By the way, quick programming note, we're going to put up, the snippets of these shows probably starting next week, because we got to make it through the end of the year. I don't know if we're going to do any more live shows for 2024. It's been a great ride since we've been back, pal. I got to be honest, I missed you. I missed you a lot since you moved to an undisclosed location. And this just feels like a little bit of normalcy in a storm of just utter chaos in my life. So
no, bro, I love it. I missed you. I miss you too still. And I'm looking forward to next year and getting back into current events. When we come back early next year, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be in the midst of it, right? The Republicans are going to be in chaos in the House. We're going to be getting ready for Donald Trump to regain power and become king for the next decade or so. And I'm looking forward to the ride with you.
It's going to be a fun ride. I'm glad you're here with me, pal. And I'm glad that all of you are here with us as well. We got a lot of fun stuff planned in 2025. We're bringing back the Sharpton Scale of Buffoonery.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about the magnitude and buffoonish nature of these characters. We're going to be doing some members-only stuff, so please consider joining as a member to our channel here, Buffoon of the Week. We're going to be talking about a lot about that in the future. And as always, like and share videos with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. You thought we had some fun this year? It's going to get even wilder in 2025. We got Anthony Weiner coming back. We got Eric Adams going through shit. We got to see what's going on with Mike Johnson and Trump and the power struggle within the Republican Party. And then the loony Democrats are going to be around everywhere. it's going to be an embarrassment of riches when it comes to this channel.
We're going to win so much next year, Gene, that the people watching this show are going to get tired of winning, and they're going to beg us, please, Ross and Gene, please stop winning. We're winning too much. And we're going to tell them, no, we got to win more.
That sounds oddly familiar. I wonder who said that. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in to Buffoon of the Year. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Let's go out with a little bit of a merry jingle here. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you guys live in the new year, but you'll be seeing us on replay throughout the next week or so. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, everybody.
Dumb decisions all the way, making news most every day. Who's the clown we all should cheer? It's time for Buffoon of the Year. Tripping over words they say, caught on camera, no delay. Silly stunts will volunteer. Celebrate Buffoon of the Year. Buffoon of the Year. Laugh and shed a tear. Biggest fool, it's clear. Buffoon of the Year. Every headline, a new mess. Who will win? We all can guess. Silly antics, loud and clear. It's time for Buffoon of the Year. Politicians, celebs alike, are behaving out of sight, making blunders for us dear. Celebrate Buffoon of the Year. Buffoon of the Year. Laugh and shed a tear. Biggest fool, it's clear. Buffoon of the Year. Buffoon of the Year. Laugh and shed a tear. Biggest fool, it's clear. Buffoon of the Year. Every headline, a new mess. Who will win? We all can guess. Silly antics, loud and clear. It's time for Buffoon of the Year. Buffoon of the Year. Laugh and shed a tear. Biggest fool, it's clear. Buffoon of the Year.